Hall of Fame. The comedian Rick Reynolds, a guy from Portland, was obsessed with fame early in his career. He thought that if you were famous, that when you die, they'd put your name in the headline of the article written about you. Comedian Rick Reynolds dies in a pool of blood. Now, if you were exceptional at your job, but not famous, then your job would be in the headline. Comedian dies in a pool of blood. At that point in his career, he thought the headline would read, "Man stains carpet." Did I say he was from Portland? So, like many of the inducted tonight have mentioned that they're here because of many people standing on the shoulders of so many. For me, it's my family. My partners, present and past, my staff, present and past, collaborators, creative collaborators, especially writers, illustrators, photographers, filmmakers, and of course, the clients who were willing and trusting to do something different. And this list is way too long to mention everybody that's really, really worth mentioning. So I'm going to post them all online. And it's taking a while to actually collect all those names. So, but tonight I wanted to mention a few of those less than famous who set me on a path. My first grade teacher. Yeah. Evelyn Amspoker. So she took our class on a field trip to a local dairy farm. And when we returned, she assigned us each an art project to draw a cow. Later that year, she mounted and matted my drawing, took it to the Oregon State Fair, and entered it into the art exhibition, where it won a blue ribbon. So my teacher did this, not my mom, not my grandparents. She did it on her own time, on her own dime. And she traveled over 100 miles because she thought a kid in her class had some talent, should be recognized. So that blue ribbon proved to me that I was good at something, and it wasn't my family or my friends. It was verified by people that didn't know me at all. So, when we got that drawing back home, my dog ate it. He shredded it. It was a cow. Even the dog knew it was a cow. That's true, by the way. When I was 11, I was riding in the car with my grandfather, George Sandstrom. He said, "Steve, you'll never have to worry about getting a job." I wasn't really looking for work at the time. But I asked him, why? And he says, "Because you can draw a perfectly straight line without a ruler." Well, he was a mechanical contractor. He had a certain perspective on life. But I will say at 11, I was one of the two smallest kids in the class. I was always one of the two smallest kids. I was short and really skinny. And the joke was I'd have to run around the shower to get wet. It's kind of true. But what he said, my grandfather, to a puny, unemployed 11-year-old kid. Gave me confidence. He died 2 years later, but that moment stayed on. In high school, my art teacher was a man named Robert Bordwell. Early in his life, he studied photography with Minor White, one of the most significant American photographers of the 20th century. In high school photography class, Bordwell had us mix our own film and print developers from scratch. Chemicals, weights, scales. Now, this stuff could be purchased at, any photo supply store, and that's what the professionals did. It was, fairly inexpensive, and it was time-saving, except that what we were concocting in class were Minor White's personal formulas. Those couldn't be purchased anywhere. Robert Bordwell got his master's degree from Reed College, where he studied calligraphy from Lloyd Reynolds. Reynolds had introduced italic handwriting in historical letter forms to academia. And many of his students went on to create typefaces still used today. So Apple Chancery, that was created directly from Lloyd Reynolds' handwriting. Now, you might know of Reed College as the school that Steve Jobs did not graduate from. But he took calligraphy classes because he was fascinated with every posting around campus. It didn't matter if it was for a lecture series or for an apartment for rent. They were frameable, hand-lettered works of art. Now, at age 15 in high school, I was taking Robert Bordwell's calligraphy class. The same lessons being taught then at Reed College. Bordwell would teach you anything. Lost wax metal casting, aerodynamics, animation, rug hooking if you wanted. One kid was obsessed with hot rod culture and he wanted to become a pinstriper. He was also ambidextrous. So Bordwell bought him some brushes, actually 2 sets of brushes, and paint. And then he convinced the school librarian to let the kid practice on our AV equipment. So our Bill and Hal projectors, our tape recorders and the carts they rolled around on, yeah, they looked like Von Dutch or Big Daddy Ed Roth had gotten a hold of them. They were beautiful. Also, a few of us would bring our lunches into the art room, and Bordwell would play recordings of Alan Watts' lectures on Zen Buddhism. This is my high school art teacher. In 1957, he'd won a Science Person of the Year award from the state of Oregon for tracking the Soviet Sputnik satellite with his 35mm Pentax camera and some super high-speed spy film, which he never revealed where he got that. In college, my advisor was the head of the School of Art at the University of Oregon. His name was David Foster, and like Bordwell, he was a unicorn, as we call him today. One of Foster's teaching methods was to ask more questions of his students than they asked him. Now, I had been doing illustrations and some editorial cartoons for the daily student newspaper, and the cartoons had a pretty, they became pretty popular with students and even for some of the faculty. And one day Foster asked me if I was getting paid to do them. No. Do you want credits for it? You can do that? Yeah, I'm the head of the art department. So we'd meet weekly to discuss, with lots of life lessons built in, another of his teaching methods. Now, I'd always received great feedback for the cartoons that I'd been doing, and especially with the students. But there was one cartoon that I did, and it was about nuclear waste, and it was kind of a dud. Well, with one exception, a woman who worked in production at the newspaper, she grew up in Hanford, Washington, the nuclear waste site for the US. Her high school teams were called the Bombers. She liked it. So later when I met with Foster and I told him that the cartoon was a bust, well, except for one person who appreciated it, he said, "Isn't that enough?" I was a fine arts major at the University of Oregon. Go Ducks. I drew a lot of ducks. I've never taken a design class, actually, ever. So I was a fine artist, and as a fine artist, the problems you solve are your own. I found that difficult, exhausting. As a designer, I solve other people's problems. So one could say my life has been about avoidance. I wasn't really any different as a kid. I wasn't motivated at all to clean my room, but if my friend couldn't go out and play until his room was clean, I'd clean it in a few minutes. So now I guess I clean my clients' rooms. My final year at the university, we had a visiting professor from New York. His name was Tim Corkery. Tim was a painter and an intellectual who'd been teaching part-time at the Maryland Art Institute, but he moved to Eugene, Oregon. Because they were building a disco under his Soho loft and he couldn't tolerate the noise anymore. So he took a one-year job in Eugene, but he hated Eugene. Oh God, he hated Eugene. He said he couldn't trust air, he couldn't see. He wanted to know why is everybody running and from what? I should read a book. So one afternoon, Tim walked into my studio where I had several abstract drawings pinned on the walls and a very large canvas that I was about 2 hours into and kind of stuck. And he commented, "I see a few themes in this work, geometry, symmetry, some references to landscape, and you know, possibly the human form." Yeah. The compositions appear to be symmetrical, but are they? No, they're slightly off center. And he walked over to the large canvas and he added, "The lines appeared to be straight when I first looked at it, but then when I looked down them, they're curved somewhat. Yeah, I have a bent straight edge I'm using. Why? Because the imperfection just looks better to me." Ah, he said, "Subversion of expectation." What? Subversion of expectation. The viewer sees symmetry, but it's not. The viewer believes the lines are straight, yet they're not. You've subverted their expectation. In three words that I could have never assembled then or now, Tim Corkery described my entire creative process. It's what I've always done. It's what I still do. And it's the underlying method for any success I've helped achieve for clients. And it's likely the way many of you have approached your creative solutions, but just didn't have those three words assembled to describe it. And as he walked out of my studio, pointed at this large painting that I had in progress and was stuck, and he said, "I don't know what you're planning to do next with this, but I think it's fucking perfect as is." Now, these people, except my grandfather, were public school teachers. All of them, public school teachers. And tonight, we've honored the first public school teacher to be inducted in the Creative Hall of Fame, Deb Morrison. So thank you, Kevin and Yash and the team at the One Club. Thank you, Board of Directors, and a shout out to Mary Warlick for her prior 25 years leading the organization. Thank you, David Baldwin, for the belief and the effort of nominating me. I'm deeply honored. And also, you know, I don't plan on leaving this life anytime soon. But if there is an article written, now it won't read Man Stains Carpet. Thank you.